Hello again, everyone. Tommy back with another one of my little Sunday rants. Today, I want to talk about the likelihood of the existence of God and why, in a way, to me, it doesn't really matter how likely it is. You hear this a lot in all kinds of apologetic arguments for the existence of God, whether it's, the Kalam, teleological argument, pick yours. I say one of the reasons that a lot of apologists think that their particular pet argument or whatever argument they're using works is because they say, well, it's not that it proves God's existence, which is its own thing about why they just don't expect it to be proven, but they'll say, but it's about just picking the most likely thing, or they'll use phrases like the most likely inference from the data or whatever. They'll say, of all the possible explanations that we have for either whether it's like the fine tuning of the universe, which again, debatable, but sure, let's go with it, fine tuned, or if they want to argue that it looks like the universe had a beginning, which is also debatable, but again, just take all of these arguments and say, sure, they're true. Yeah, they make sense. Or yeah, I guess not they're true. They just make sense. And you might say of all the possible explanations, God is the most likely explanation for why things are the way they are or why we see certain things in existence, whatever. Okay, at that point, even if I grant you, I'll say, okay, the most likely explanation for the fine tuning, for, Kalam, why anything exists at all, why we have a sense of morality. Okay, sure. The most likely explanation is God, and specifically God as presented in Christianity. Okay, granted. God's the most likely explanation. Now, where is he? It's like, okay, we've shown that it's most likely the case that he does exist and he is the cause for all of this. Okay, then where is he? Because to me, that's the most important part. Like, you can't just say this is the most likely thing and then be done with it, especially if it's something like a relational God that wants us to know him or know things about him or whatever it takes to come to a saving belief, whatever that means. It seems like he's interested in us actually experiencing him in some way. So just saying it's most likely that he exists, it's like, okay, great. So what? Like it needs to go beyond that. It's like if you're a sports fan, you probably hear often like before a game or match, depending on the sport, is played, it's often said, okay, it's more likely that this team will win, for betting purposes or not. They'll say going into the game based on their record, how they've been playing recently, what players are healthy, who's going to be starting, whatever. They'll say it looks like it's more likely that this team will win. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Like I've seen stats that'll say like this team has a 99% chance of winning. It's like, okay, we've established that it's more likely than not that this team will win. We still have to actually play the game or the match to actually see if they end up actually winning. Or you could say tomorrow there's like a 90% chance of rain. It's like, okay, good to know what the odds are right now, but eventually tomorrow comes and we actually see if it rains or not. Again, it's just not good enough to say, well, it's likely, but obviously people care about more than that. Or in science, you see this all the time. Like before we make a discovery, someone says, okay, well, it's such and such likelihood that this certain type of creature or this kind of star or this astronomical phenomenon or this particle, whatever that so up to now has been theoretical, here's the odds that this thing actually exists. But then they still go out and actually look for it and try to find it and run tests to see if they can detect it in any way. And until they can actually show that it exists, I mean, they aren't just satisfied. Well, it probably does. The example that comes to mind is the Higgs boson. It's like it was this thing that was theoretical for a while. They say, well, yeah, this probably exists, but they didn't stop there. They kept looking. But It also, the difference that comes into play here between the likelihood of God existing or the likelihood of the Higgs boson or some other such thing existing, which again makes it so odd that we don't actually have the proof of God, is God apparently wants us to know that he exists. Like the Higgs boson doesn't give a shit if we find it or not, apparently. That's why we actually have to put in the work to actually find it. But with God, it seems like it shouldn't be that hard. Like you shouldn't have to rely on likelihoods or probabilities or percentages or whatever or arguments at all even. It seems like it should just be obvious, but it's not. So, I mean, as much as I find all these apologetic arguments interesting, I like looking into them, listening to them being debated, discussed, whatever, but at the end of the day, like it kind of doesn't really matter. Like I'm not going to, you know, bet my life or form it and go about how I do everything and just base how I perceive myself and reality on just a likelihood that there's some all powerful being out there that wants to get to know me. Now, there may be other things that I will like base my life on based on percentages, going back to the weather example. Like, yeah, if I see that if I'm about to go out for the day and it's saying, okay, there's a 90% chance of rain this afternoon, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I have like an umbrella, rain jacket, whatever I need. But again, it's because the rain doesn't actually give a shit if I know if it exists or not. So it makes sense to just prepare for it just in case, because it's not going to like let me know for sure that it's coming until it shows up on radar or whatever. Obviously, hopefully this is making sense. I'm really, as I'm explaining it, my brain's having a hard time putting all the words together. Maybe I should have put more work into this before recording, but hey, such is the nature of these things, I guess. So, but you kind of see what I'm saying here. Like, whether or not God exists, based on the fact that he wants us to know that he exists, it seems like it really shouldn't have to rely on likelihood or probability. So, this is why, as much as, like I said, as much as I find all these arguments interesting, at the end of the day, I'm willing to even just grant, like, okay, apologists, you're right. It's more, God is the most likely, most plausible explanation for reality as we see it. Where is he? Yeah, it's just as simple as that. Until he shows up, yeah, I kind of don't care how likely it is. I'm just gonna keep living my life as if he's not there, because like as long as I've been doing that, it seems to work just fine. So I'll just keep doing that until he gives me a reason to do otherwise. So, yep. So that's it for today, I guess. Yeah, let me know what you think. If reasons for God's existence being more likely to you, if that makes a difference. If it doesn't, yeah, let me know what you think, as always. So have a good one. See you next time.